Nancy goes on vacation and accidentally uncovers a mystery cliché. Nancy is not at all suspicious of the names Dread Isle or Calamity Bay. There shouldn't be a space after this ellipsis.
There's George.
Who is Nancy talking to here? Where is Nancy's luggage? The plane is flying in George's direction, but the pilot doesn't see her running and waving her arms for help.
I've been in here ever since I found that ransom note.
This entire game is George's fault. If she had any sense, she would have been waiting on the dock when Nancy arrived, so she could talk to the pilot and immediately inform the authorities. Instead, she hides inside the whole time playing on her phone, causing her to miss the pilot and forcing Nancy to go on a 400-year-old scavenger hunt.
I've been trying to get this satellite phone to work so we can call for help. So far, no luck. I feel so useless.
That's because you are useless, George.
I knew I should have gone with her, but I was just so tired.
Let me get this straight. The only reason George wasn't kidnapped is because she was tired and wanted a nap? George!
When I woke up this morning, Bess's bed hadn't been slept in, and
Where are these beds that George speaks of? George's tan.
I was hoping to get all three of you down there, but your pal George lucked out.
Dwayne expected to have 2 kidnapping victims, but all of his notes mention 1 kidnapping victim. Nancy follows a scavenger hunt to fabulous treasure cliché. Why can't Nancy try to fix the phone? Nancy's the one who's good at fixing things, after all. Nancy starts and finishes a treasure hunt in less time than it takes George to fix a phone.
hey, I found some walkie-talkies. Here.
Instead of turning around and handing over the walkie-talkie, Nancy throws it backwards over her shoulder without looking at George.
That's weird. What is?
I've solved the case in every spot that's marked on this map.
Probably just a coincidence.
George is an idiot.
Some fisherman just happens to be camping on the very beach where Bess disappears. That's way too much of a coincidence for me.
George is suspicious of Johnny, but not suspicious of how the culprit tracked the last several years of Nancy's life. Why did Dwayne put this map here anyway? This puzzle needs instructions.
That looks right, but I still need a battery.
It is confusing to have Nancy say this right after solving a puzzle with 4 batteries.
Cuckoo, that's weird. You look just like this bird I met in England named Lulu.
How does Nancy not notice the picture of Lulu in the background? Instead of getting a second character in this game, we get a parrot and monkeys.
The only way we're going to find out who it is
By finding Bess.
Nancy pauses in the middle of her sentence.
I've seen a key. I'm not sure if it's the key.
George found a key, but she didn't try to use it on anything because she's useless in this game.
Must be where they store the sails.
Sails are in the sail bin. Thank you, Captain Obvious. Math puzzles already? 5 minutes in and my brain hurts. I like this puzzle, but I had a hard time keeping track of where I was on this 15-step list, especially since I had to do multiplication at the same time. This game teases us with multiple shots of Nancy from a distance. Quit messing with us and show us what Nancy looks like already. This puzzle. These pages read like they were written yesterday, when they're supposed to be written 400 years ago by a non-native English speaker. El Toro still writes perfect English after several years on the island, even though there are no books or people to help him keep up his proficiency in the language. Each letter has the same symbol in this puzzle, but in the title screen, the letter S has 4 different symbols. The game gives you no indication when you've solved this puzzle correctly, which made me think I had the wrong solution. There is only 1 suspect in this mystery! This makes the culprit's identity super obvious. Nancy isn't suspicious of Johnny, even though he's the only person who could have kidnapped Bess. Nancy isn't suspicious of Johnny, even though he has a human-sized trap set up in the exact same spot where Bess disappeared. Nancy never tries to search Johnny's area.
But if you want it, you must earn it.
Nancy does everyone else's chores cliché. Driving in this game is slow and boring, and the shortcuts do not help save much time. Nancy goes rock climbing without a helmet, ropes, or any other equipment. Nancy goes rock climbing without any equipment, but she refuses to swim without any equipment. The monkeys throw rocks at Nancy to keep her from reaching the top of the mountain. The monkeys are jerks. The monkeys never run out of rocks to throw. Nancy could easily walk around the monkeys here, but she doesn't. Instead, she lets them boss her around. You can't see the ear of the monkey with the notched ear. This puzzle is almost impossible on senior mode.
Lost that game.
These monkeys are jerks. Who taught the monkeys to laugh at Nancy?
You really know how to play a game?
Nancy asked this question to the monkey multiple times. Nancy, you just played a game with the monkey. Why are you asking if it can play games? Nancy doesn't tell George that Johnny captured her and tied her up. The top inch of the screen is a guava meter. They easily could have kept the guavas in Nancy's inventory and given us a larger screen instead. Nancy is unable to read the How to Sail book before she goes sailing.
My boat and my metal detector, they are my only true possessions.
Says the man who is surrounded by many possessions.
You must give me the compass which the monkey with the notched ear stole from my boat.
Why does Johnny need a compass when he has a working GPS?
Good thing I'm up to date on my diving certification.
Wow, how convenient! With 1600s technology, El Toro and his men created this elaborate network of puzzles, including timers, retractable walls, and underwater segments. Every piece of these puzzles is in perfect condition despite being 400 years old. This island has a famous lost treasure, but since everything is still in place, no treasure hunters must have come here before. You can't swim past some parts of the ship. This made me think you can't swim past any parts of the ship, so I got stuck because the solution is to swim over the middle of the ship. This puzzle is hard enough without a time limit. It's a hassle to do 5 translation puzzles in a row, especially since you have to keep going back and forth between the astrolabe and the book every couple of letters. Apparently El Toro is a big fan of Secret of the Scarlet Hand. Nancy can walk to the mirrors on the right in order to adjust them, but she can't take 2 extra steps to reach the treasure. Nancy can only tilt these mirrors in 2 positions. Mirrors don't work like that in real life. Why do the lights go out the instant Nancy gets this thing? Nancy's walkie-talkie never emits static, except at this one moment where you need to remember it exists.
It'd take you a while to get anywhere down there on foot, I can tell you that.
And yet George easily crosses the entire island on foot. The picture on the outside of this jigsaw puzzle doesn't match the picture you're trying to make. George clearly put jigsaw puzzle pieces down in the lower left corner, but when we start slider puzzle mode, the lower left corner is empty. Instead of giving George a ride back to the resort, Nancy forces George to walk there. Dwayne made up a fake identity for his fake identity. Talk about obsessive. Thanks to Johnny's alternate identity, they had to re-record and reanimate all of his dialogue. That seems like a ton of work with no payoff. Why couldn't they have put all that time into giving us a second character? Johnny lies about his identity once, but Nancy believes him the second time.
I've seen a metal rod that height. The one Cuckoo the parrot is perched on.
Nancy instantly recognizes Cuckoo's perch as being half a fathom tall. Every piece of driftwood on this island just happens to be the exact same height. Since all the driftwood is the same height as Cuckoo's perch, why can't Nancy use driftwood in place of Cuckoo's perch? Nancy can only take 1 piece of driftwood at a time.
Not right!
Why not?
4 branches! Cuckoo want perch with 4 branches!
Cuckoo is way too picky. Yeah, you could do the math for this puzzle, but it's way easier to just check in every spot until you find the right one. This scene convinces Nancy there are multiple kidnappers, when it could easily be 1 person running. This happens when Nancy is using the astrolabe on top of the mountain. Either Dwayne somehow has a way to spy on Nancy while she's up there, or he has amazing timing. These islands don't exist until Nancy sees them through the astrolabe. In real life, things still exist even if you haven't seen them before. If you try to start sailing by going east, the game assumes you're trying to stop sailing. Nancy sees a flash of light on the island and instantly knows it came from George's area.
Take a look. I'm on it. Over and out.
How does George not hear the monkeys? Johnny ignores George to save on animation.
I'm afraid I'm just gonna have to bug you until you give it to me. Sorry.
Here is what I will do.
I'm not going anywhere until you help me find Bess. Hey! Hey! Hello?
When Nancy bugs Johnny, he gives in to her. When George bugs Johnny, he ignores her. George stole Nancy's magnifying glass? What a jerk! George has different bangs in this picture. This puzzle is pure chance, making it very frustrating when you lose.
Lost to a monkey, I hate that.
It sounds like this happens to George often.
Scuba diving? Are you nuts? With all the sharks around here?
George, this place is called the Shark Diving Ecotourism Resort. I would expect people to swim with sharks here.
George, contrary to what the movies would have you believe, sharks rarely attack humans, especially when they live in a healthy ecosystem like this, where they have lots of real fish to eat. If I don't bother them, they're not going to bother me.
This has been a public service announcement by Nancy Drew.
Pretty much convinced the Gibsons are the ones who kidnapped Bess in order to get me to find that treasure for them.
Sure, let's ignore the obvious culprit and zero in on the people who aren't even here. The Gibsons went on vacation without leaving anyone behind to take care of their resort or pet parrot. There is still an octopus in this cave after 400 years. Nancy can only take one shell at a time. This puzzle. We never get told how Bess's bracelet ended up buried in the beach she never visited. This puzzle.
If you program my GPS with the obstacles on this chart, I won't be able to get off this island until that's done.
None of these obstacles are in the way. All Johnny has to do is sail directly west to reach San Salvador. This puzzle. Nancy ignores all this treasure in favor of an out-of-date map. If Nancy calls George after finding the treasure, she says nothing happened.
Nancy, you're here. This just showed up on the porch.
George is so unobservant, Dwayne is able to leave multiple notes for her without her noticing him. How does Dwayne know Nancy found the treasure? Could he see what she was doing in the underwater cave system? Dwayne insists that Nancy come alone, even though that means George could show up unexpectedly and foil his plans.
Well, the good news is I found the treasure. It's a map.
And a bunch of gold, but nobody cares about that for some reason. The bottom of Dwayne's shirt changes color here after every line of dialogue. Conveniently for the animation department, Dwayne removes his disguise off camera.
Guy from New York, the one who threatened the life of Rick Arlen. You're the agent.
This game spoils the culprit of the second Nancy Drew game.
Dwayne, you idiot! Dwayne Powers!
The voice actor doesn't even try to imitate Dwayne's voice. I love Dwayne, but they got Shorty's voice actor to play him. Why didn't they make Shorty the culprit? He would have fit the story much better than Dwayne does. Dwayne goes from intense murdering culprit to calm treasure hunter culprit. Why is Dwayne no longer obsessed with getting revenge on Rick Arlen?
But he couldn't decode it, nor could I.
Let me get this straight. Dwayne was smart enough to put this entire plan into motion, but not smart enough to solve a simple letter cipher? Dwayne shuffles around awkwardly while Nancy explains the plot of the game.
I thought you went to prison.
I did. For several long years.
Dwayne spent several years in prison, but Nancy hasn't aged at all. Nancy doesn't see this rope trick coming. Nancy is an idiot. How did Dwayne move Nancy from the upside-down net to this hole? Where is this hole? Bess stands around and says nothing while Nancy and Dwayne talk to each other for 36 seconds. The M-dash is split up into two different lines here. By total coincidence, Dwayne traps Nancy in El Toro's hidden treasure room. Bess doesn't want to talk to Nancy. This glitch where Bess disappears. This puzzle.
She even called the FBI, but they put her on hold.
Even though Nancy worked for the Italian FBI 2 games ago.
Fortunately, it doesn't look like anyone will ever know for sure.
What happened to Dwayne? We need closure for Dwayne. The credits list 3 characters who didn't appear in this game. Here's a problem which didn't make it into the final video. Nancy can talk to the monkeys. She can say, "How are you doing today?" and "Hey, how are you?" And the monkeys don't respond to her because monkeys don't talk. Why did they even bother to include those dialogue options?